Okay, when trying to identify the amplitude, the period, and the phase shift of a trig function, I put these two equations up here. They're ways of, like when you have y equals mx plus b, m is the slope. That tells us how fast the line changes, right? And b is the y-intercept. It's the same type of thing with this stuff, except, now that we're in trig land, just a little bit more complicated. A is always the amplitude. Okay, so whether it's sine or cosine, if you multiply by a represents the amplitude. Okay, and the period, the period of like cosine x, like a plain old cosine function, the period is 2 pi. So the period for any other function with some modifications in it, like cosine 2x, cosine like x over pi or something like that, the period is just going to be 2 pi divided by b. So when you identify the letter B, which I'll do in this example in just a second, that tells you the period. And then the phase shift, be careful not to swear on this one. I sometimes miss the F there. It's a C over B. Okay, so let's see. For this problem here, we got y equals -3 sine 2x minus pi plus 1. Now this one's almost in this form up here, okay, except for the inside the parentheses. Y equals -3. The amplitude is just 3. Okay, you wouldn't say -3 because -3 just means you go in the opposite direction. Sine usually starts going up and then down, but a -3 just means you start going down and then up. So it still has the same amplitude. Okay, so y equals -3 sine 2x minus pi plus 1. So if we rearrange the parentheses, we have to factor out that 2 because look, x is by itself. Sorry here. So we got to factor out the 2. And we get x minus pi over 2 here. So just divide both of these by 2. If you were to multiply 2 back in, it turns into the same thing. Now I can identify what my b is, and that will help me identify the period and the phase shift. Okay. So the amplitude, we're going to just say +3. The negative doesn't come into play because amplitude means how high or how low it goes from like the midline of the sine or cosine function. So it's always the absolute value of a. The period is 2 pi divided by b. So for this one, it's 2 pi divided by, our b is 2, right? So the period is just going to be pi. And then the phase shift is c over b. So we got pi over 2 for our phase shift. Okay, just shifted it pi over 2 units from the start. Let's see what the next one is. Same type of thing for this one. So real quick. Now there's a 1 in front of you here, okay? So the amplitude is 1. And b, the number that's multiplying to x, is pi over 4. So the period, it's always 2 pi divided by b. So in this case, it's 2 pi divided by pi over 4. So that's the same thing as saying 2 pi times 4 over pi, right? Because you could, if you're dividing a fraction, you can evaluate that by flipping and multiplying the fraction. Maybe I should write that out because that's sometimes. Oh, it's 2 pi divided by pi over 4. That's another way of writing this fraction, right? So you flip and multiply the second fraction. So the pi's cancel out. You're left with 8. Okay, the period is 8. Okay, so hopefully that helps with this topic. Just a little bit of factoring that has to be done. Oh, so this is a little bit different. So solutions. Oh, okay, this is a different topic. Okay, we'll just pause there.